How you feeling?
I'm good.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I know it's been a long time coming.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I know.
Yes,
Good.
we've been planning this, but I'm glad we got it done.
Nah, for sure. You know what this episode called?
No, I don't. Tell me, please.
Just guess. I want you to guess.
Talking about guess.
Yeah, all right, you can't guess.
Growing through reflection.
Nah, we just, no, not that one. We might have to use that for another one. It's called The Precious Life, but at a Price.
Okay.
The Precious Life at a Price.
You
like that, don't you?
You the background in marketing.
Yeah. I mean, I ain't gonna say all of that, but yeah. So
okay.
Obviously, y'all, we have Precious Price on today.
Yes.
It's so much I can say. I know we've been connected for a while. We finally getting to meet in person, actually sit down. I know we spoke over the phone several times.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a plethora of things. But like I said, being that we calling this The Precious Life at a Price, we're going to be diving into your life a little more behind the scenes, because we obviously know what you do. But you could tell a little people about what you do, and then we'll go behind it.
Of course. Okay. So yeah, I'm Precious Price. Came to Atlanta 5 years ago, originally from Chicago. Went to Indiana University, finished up there, and then came here to Atlanta. And I have a background in marketing. That's my professional background, kind of grounded in everything that I do is marketing and business. Okay. I got my master's in information systems, technology management. And I say all of this because it then many people don't even realize or don't think that it rolls into what I do now, which most people now but have become familiar with me through everything that I've been doing in real estate in terms of short-term rentals, vacation rentals, and even now small-scale development or what many people know as tiny homes.
Correct.
So yeah, about 3 years ago, built a tiny house in my own backyard here in Atlanta, Georgia, in the back of one of my investment properties. That did amazing. And just through weaving in that marketing experience, I produced a docuseries around that. It was really popular. And at this point, now have been able to, honestly, I can say I've been featured in major publications, TED Talks, CNBC, New York Times, all of that. And honestly, it's been a really great experience. So everything that I do is really grounded in helping people to achieve more financial independence and honestly just gain more financial literacy via real estate and just other money-making methods.
Correct. Well, first and foremost, I want to say congratulations on all of those. I do know you was featured in New York Times, like you said, the TED Talk, and just amazing. I really just want to commend you, because I think this is why I said I wanted to bring you on, because behind this is what people see today. Yeah. But let's talk about that behind the scenes of what really got you there, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual warfares. And we even got to say warfares, but just the challenges that obviously had to come with where you are today.
Yes, absolutely, because we know it was some challenges.
Yeah,
people tend to see the success and they forget that so much comes with it. So yes, let's get into it.
So what? So let's say starting from there, let's start with the tiny home, right? Behind the scenes, I know you dealt with a lot in the sense of the contractor. So let's talk about that a little bit and how you was able to overcome those situations.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So starting the process of the tiny house, which I like to always educate folks, the formal term for what I did is accessory dwelling unit, or ADU. Okay. A tiny house is slightly different, but because many people aren't familiar with the space, that's just what we call everything, tiny house.
Makes sense.
But I started that ADU build in 2020. This was the middle of the pandemic. I had just gotten back like living in my own property because everything had then shut down. I was no longer Airbnbing or like doing a short-term rental. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I have this whole house to myself. I need a way to make some money. And that was, I looked in the backyard and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. Like I can build a house back there. I'm gonna stay there, and then I'm gonna rent this house out for money or cash. Looking back, I was in over my head.
Hey, it'd be like that.
I was so in over my head. I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I've always been a really good planner, attention to details. I can do research. So I started creating like an entire doc of everything that was needed. What are the requirements or whatever? I knew I needed contractors. I needed to get the permits, all of this extra stuff. And that's when I started to realize like, okay, this is a huge feat. This is a huge project, and there's no resource. Like at the time, there was no resource whatsoever that existed that can pretty much, number one, simply tell you like, okay, is this something that I can do? And then number two, how do I actually get it done? Right. We have all of these YouTube videos about people converting school buses into houses, but what does that really mean for me, right? So started the build and honestly just really began putting one foot in front of the other from day one. it was insane. From day one, it was insane. Even when we like were getting the structure delivered, and I say we, this is like me, likely the contractors, and then all of the roles that I played within this, because it was basically me, just me.
Okay.
So from day one of the shed delivery, because I did a shed to ADU or shed to tiny home conversion, and just even trying to like make sure it can fit in the backyard in that kind of like space that we have between my house and my neighbor's house was just a lot. But before even doing that, really finding people that could, like, they know this process, right? Like, because it's not just, okay, well, we're just gonna throw a shed in the backyard, put some drywall up, paint it. It's not that simple.
Correct.
Really connecting all the utilities like plumbing, electric, water, and even furthermore, like concrete, all of that. It was just a lot. So managing all of that was an insane process. And many people know that if you watched my docuseries, Going Tiny, then you know I went through 3 sets of contractors, like you mentioned. Oh my goodness. So the first set completely basically lied on like what they were able to do. And honestly, I'm not gonna say I don't blame them. Yes, I do, because I got my money back. But I do blame them. But I will say, like, they underestimated what they wanted to do or what they could do, because it's like, oh, it's just a tiny house.
Yeah.
And a lot of homeowners tend to do that as well. It's like, oh, it's just a tiny house. Like, I can make this happen.
Yeah.
But again, it has everything that a normal house would. Like, the only difference is the size of the structure at the end of the project. That's
sense,
it.
yeah.
Everything else is the same. Running water, all of that. So it was just a lot. The second piece was, of course, like dealing with the aspect of being a young woman and a young Black woman in this space of real estate and construction.
Right.
This was my very first like build or like small
Major
development.
project. Okay.
Exactly, like major project. Very first one. I purchased my first house. It was basically turnkey, so it was ready. There was no work that needed to be done. So this being my first project, there were just so many pieces in regards to, number one, how do you actually like pay out contractors? Don't pay them all up front.
Never.
Not ever.
Never.
Don't pay them all up front. And then even furthermore of just like this piece of men get around women and young women, and it's like you want to start flirting, you want to start like just all
Not
of these things exactly that are very inappropriate. And that's honestly what led to like me firing the first set of contractors, even me firing the second set of contractors, and then finally landing on someone who could, number one, remediate everything that the first two that did wrong, but then honestly like move us through completion. So that was an insane experience within itself. And then even furthermore, like I said, this was the middle of the pandemic. So going through this, I hadn't seen my family in a while, right?
Yeah.
I'm from Chicago, so I was not traveling back. And then it was too much going on with the build to even do that. And then just handling this all by myself. Like, again, if you watch the docuseries, you'll see there are times that I'm like crying. I'm ready to give up. It's just so much going on because literally thing after thing after thing is going wrong. And honestly, like by the end, all of it was worth it, I would say. Exactly. But I would say maybe 75% of the way through the build is when my mindset really started to shift, because anytime something would go wrong, like I would be crying, I would be calling my parents, like what's going on. By the time we were about 75% through, I started to realize, I'm like, okay, all of this is just lessons for the next thing. They're all lessons. And sometimes the way that my parents put it at the end, when I was literally like, I think maybe $15,000 over budget. And I'm like, oh my God, this is way more than I
wanted to spend. Yeah,
exactly. Way more than I wanted to spend. My parents put it in a way like, you know, some lessons in life are just expensive. They cost more than others. Like some cost your time, some cost your money. This is just a very expensive lesson. And honestly, the more expensive it is, the more you can affirm yourself in the fact that you know damn well you're not going to make that same mistake again.
That part.
So that was like a major piece or lesson from that entire experience. But honestly, it was hard. It's still hard being within this space of real estate and construction, and being a woman. Now I've been able to kind of put the pieces in place, garner a small team, and even furthermore have a male counterpart that really like helps to bring some some oomph to everything that you're doing. So it's been cool.
Nah, and I'm glad you said that. I'm gonna definitely bring it back to your mom, because I know it's a lot we can say about that too.
Yes.
But like you said, you know what I call that, right?
What?
Pretty much everything you say, you know what I call that, right?
What?
Evolving through experience.
Come on now.
Exactly. it's the only way. Like you say, you went through all that and you seen at the end, it was like, okay, I see it was worth it. But I want to take it back a little bit.
Okay.
You said when you started, it was like during the pandemic, and you was just like confused with like trying to figure out how you're gonna bring some money. And you know what you said? You said, I looked in my backyard. So with that, I correlate that to when we are in tough times, all of us, no matter what you're going through, we got to look within ourselves. Instead of looking outside, you could have looked outside, be like, oh, let me go try to do a deal in this area or whatever.
Yeah.
But she's like, yo, this is where I'm at right now. And let me look at my backyard. So that I correlate that to looking within ourselves and to our mental, our spiritual, and all those aspects.
Yes.
So I'm glad you said that. With that being said, you kind of covered it a little bit during the pandemic. I know that was a tough time for a lot of people. So even outside of you dealing and building this and having to go through those motions, getting jerked on money or whatever, what was your mental state even prior to starting it? Like, how was you balancing that out?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Balance did not exist in my life, honestly, prior to that. So I started my career in management consulting.
Okay.
Started my career in management consulting. And if anybody is familiar with management consulting, then you know it is an intense career. You work long hours. You do a lot of traveling. There are a lot of good perks and benefits, right? Like Monday through Thursday, I'm at this client. I'm flying here. I'm doing that. You know, in first class in the hotels. It's great, but you're definitely working for, you know, the money that you're earning. You make good money, but you're working for it. So prior to the onset of the pandemic, I was actually in one of my, I would say like my most difficult projects at the time. The team was it was an all male team that I was working on. So that in and of itself was just very difficult. But then number two, I was just in a new, I guess, part of the organization that I was working at. So it was a lot going on, and balance just didn't exist. And if I can be honest and true to myself, I will say that like early on within like high school, college, even early career, balance just didn't exist. Like there was no balance. Like people would ask me, how am I like balancing this? And it's like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. I'm just putting one foot in front of the other.
That part. That's
and
life.
moving forward. So then when like the pandemic set, for a lot of people, like now we're at home, we're by ourselves, we're with all of these traits that you've now developed, and you're like it's putting a real mirror up or an eye on the fact of whether or not these are actually healthy habits. And I realized that it's not healthy, because now I used to be in the office until, you know, like 10, 11, midnight. Now it's a matter of I'm in my own house on this laptop with y'all talking until it's 12 a.m. 1 a.m. in the morning. And it's just a lot going on. And again, at the time, I was balancing both like the build for the tiny house,
Correct.
my Airbnb portfolio that at the time was like budding and growing, and this full-time job. So it was so much. It was a lot. It was so much going on, and I think that really speaks to like the breakdowns that you would see in the docuseries, and then honestly, like the many breakdowns that people just did not see.
Correct.
Like that were me by myself. And if I'm being honest with you, even like stacked on top of that at the time, I was dealing with someone or like dating someone that like I totally knew at the beginning I should not have. But it was like it was the pandemic. So sure, let's try it.
We're bored.
We're bored. We're in the house. Let's try it.
Tough.
Dealing with that, and it ended up ending in a physically and emotionally abusive situation that completely changed me in so many ways. And even furthermore, this is like right before my 25th birthday. And for those that like have been turning 25 or have turned 25, usually you know like this whole quarter life crisis thing. Like something is happening where you're figuring out your identity. What does all of this mean? Your relationship with your parents. And it was just a lot at the time. And I think that's maybe right around the time like we had got connected.
Okay.
And again, like to everybody else in the outside world, it's like, oh my gosh, all of these things are happening. Like, Precious, like you're speaking on these stages, you're hosting this, you're emceeing that, you got your rentals, you're making this money. There was so much going on the outside. And that's literally like, I think back to those times, I never even gave myself, I wouldn't say never because now I have, but at the time I didn't give myself the proper space to deal with all of that heavy stuff.
Correct.
And it ended up coming to a point where I basically like I burned out.
Crashed out.
Exactly. Crashed out. And that was crash out number one because it happened again because I didn't do it right. Burned out. And at that point, I'm like, okay, like something has to switch, something has to change. And it was really a process, I would say. But for me, it turned into like, I really need to make sure that I'm taking more time for myself rather than trying to pour into all of this. And again, I was hitting like the best success of my career. Like I was making the most money I had ever had. Like it was so much happening. But I then realized, like, I got all of those. I started getting all of the things that I ever wanted, right? Like I got the money, I got the house, I got the car, I got this, I got that, all the accolades. And I started to realize like it doesn't mean anything. Like I got it, and now it's like, okay, now what? And following then, it like my motto almost became the question I constantly asked myself was, okay, well, I've proved to myself at this point that I can do anything. I can push through anything, but at what cost? Like, and if it's going to cost me my peace, if it's going to cost me my sanity, if it's going to cost me like, my values, I'm not like, I can't pursue it. I'm not going after it. And I think like after all of that, there was really a huge shift in what I prioritized in my values.
Correct.
Success for me definitely used to be like, I'm hitting a meal before 30. I'm doing this. I'm doing billionaire Forbes 30 under 30. And now it's like, no, like success is I want to wake up and I don't want to feel like immediately when I jump out of the bed, I got to do this, and it. Like I want to have a slow morning. That is success to me. I want to be able to choose whatever the hell I want to do during the day. Correct. If I have a client call, then so be it. If I want to cancel it, I can cancel it and go get sangrias at 2 p.m. And like that's it. And that's what success has now become to me, because the thing is like money is a byproduct of all of that. Like once you have that, I know the money is going to be there.
Exactly.
And I know the money is coming with all of the work that I've put in. So why would I make money the carrot in front of me? Exactly. When it's like, I know it's going to come either way.
And it's worthless.
It's worthless. So let me really prioritize. What I started to do was, rather than having these high level goals, like large goals, let me really like look at lifestyle design. How do I want my lifestyle to be designed on a day-to-day basis? And then let me build my life and everything that I'm doing around that.
I commend you. I can only say that because again, you've made it super. Like, I don't even gonna say super, but I commend you because, like you said, seeing that behind the scenes or whatnot, and like you said, going behind it, and like you said, as far as going through that, I commend you because not too many people would have even said that, dealing with the physical and abusive relationship after pretty much during that time, your phase is like the best part of your life, but behind closed doors, people don't know what you're dealing with, and that's exactly why I call this the precious life at a price, because it's like, these are the prices you're paying to live this life. And it's funny because your name is Precious, and I just think it's so dope to me that I came up with that. So I just saying.
Come on now, you gotta dust your shoulders off.
I'm just saying, that was super dope because I appreciate you even sharing that, because I feel like I appreciate that. I hope I'm giving you a comfortable space to pretty much open up and say that, because there's so many women that see where you're at now and maybe dealing with that same situation or in any situation, just dealing with warfare behind closed doors, and they're just trying to figure out the next step. And also with that one to be said, would you always say you was a outgoing person?
That's a good question. I don't know if I would say always outgoing. No, like it's almost like the introvert extrovert question. And for me, I get my energy from myself. Like I have to like have time where I'm decompressing. It's just me, and I can think quietly. But I do enjoy, like I can say I'm a people person. Okay. Like I do well. I know how to navigate a room. I know how to network. Correct. I know how to build relationships and make connections. And I think that's really just like the business in me. Like,
nah, for sure.
They dang near teach you that in business school.
Nah, for sure. And I want to ask you this, like, what would you give to any woman out there? Because as a man, I'm actually gaining something from you, and I think men need to understand we can always gain something even from women. And I'm gaining a lot from you, and I'll go back to why I say that. But what would you say as of right now you can give a woman your age or even younger intangible thought or resource that would pretty much be able to help them prevail their life in every aspect, no matter how big or small you may think it is?
Live in the moment. Living and this is not to say like forsake the future, but I know that women, we tend to be very like forward thinking, like future oriented, right? Like thinking about, okay, like the marriage, the kids, the job, the career, all of these things. But what I found in that season that we're talking about was a lot of my like, because at that time, like after again, like that whole situation ended in some crazy. I had to go to a psychiatrist. I ended up being diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
Okay.
And I realized that a lot of my anxiety came from the fact that I was always living in the future. Like even once the tiny home was finished, it's like, okay, well, what's next? Once I got the TED Talk, it was like, okay, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? Rather than living in like basking in what you have already accomplished and just being there and living in the moment. And when I realized that, a lot of my anxiety, for the most part, tended to subside, or I at least know how to manage it now when it does come up.
Correct.
Because again, like you and your body are living in the present, but if your mind is constantly in the future, that gap is what creates that anxiety and that stress, because you're thinking about everything that you have to do rather than everything that you maybe already have or have already accomplished.
Correct.
So that would be my main piece for many women, is like, bring yourself back to now. One of my very, very favorite books is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, I heard of it.
That would be my number one recommendation. I recommend that to everyone who tells me that they are struggling with anxiety or struggling with just stress or whatever.
Yeah.
The Power of Now will bring you back into like, or help you understand, like, really it's all a decision of the mind.
Correct.
That's it.
Yeah, the mindset is key. Now, I'm definitely gonna have to get that book. I definitely heard it before, and I like, just to be transparent too. I feel like not necessarily that is what I deal with, but like you said, always waking up and feeling I got to keep getting to it. It's like not finding a balance, and I feel like I'm at that place too where it's like it's no balance. I think sometimes we got to be unbalanced to eventually later on get balanced. But I feel like that time is going to come when it need be. But right now it's like I'm in a phase where it's like every day I get up, it's automatically something I got to do, but not in a sense where I feel stressed out or overwhelmed in it. It's just like, this is what I signed up for.
Yes.
That's the thing I say I'm in. I don't know. Would you even think that's a good thing, or what was your opinion on that?
So I think that all of it, I think the difference between that is the fact that there's an ebb and flow with what you're talking about. As long as there is a ebb and a flow, that is what I've learned. But if you're always like, if you have always and are always operating in the state of there's always something else to do, I always am thinking about something, and it never ends. You never have like that break period where you feel like you've reached something. That is where the problem occurs. So it sounds like for you understand that, okay, right now I'm gonna be a little unbalanced. I'm gonna be a little, maybe a little stressed, a little busy, but I know that it's gonna get to a point where that's not the case. As long as you prioritize that not being the case.
Correct.
And you can like see and be aware of when you are like not operating in that. Like if it's been 2-3 years of you just getting out of bed, hopping to it, grinding, give yourself a break, please, because your body is going to force you to take a break.
And I know you said you had to you crashed, not crashed out. I don't think crashed out the perfect word.
Burned out.
Burnt out. When you burnt out, what was the timeline from getting back, and what were some of those pivotal steps that you made to get back? And that's something also somebody else can pretty much take that may feel they're burnt out right now.
Timeline. So I'm not even gonna give my timeline, because the timeline looks different for everybody.
Agree.
Like it looks totally different for everybody. But some of the things that I did do and I continue to do, because I do believe that it's like a continuous journey. You're never gonna get to the point where like you've hit it and you've made it just yet. But some of those things that I did do were, number one, just sit with my feelings. Like I feel like it's very, especially in the age where we have like social media, we can always hop on a new app, and if Instagram, like if you've been going through the Instagram stories for a minute, and then they just stop because it's like, okay, you didn't went through all the stories, and then we switch an app and we go to TikTok, and then we go to Facebook,
then go back.
We're living in an age and an era where it's like we're constantly feeding our minds something rather than just sitting with what's there, sitting with the thoughts that you have. And I would say that was one of the things that I did. Like it was a major piece for me of just sitting with it, and sitting with it looked like I'm just chilling, listening to music. Like I listen to a whole lot of lo-fi now, a whole lot of like Zen music, brown noise. These are all like, this is just background music, right?
Exactly.
That allows me to still think and process my own thoughts and emotions, rather than like, I love Beyonce, but just listen to the new Beyonce album back to back. Number two, I really got back into the ritual of journaling. I've been journaling now for over 10 years now. Like I've been journaling since I was a little girl. But now I've really gotten into it being a ritual. Like when I get up, that's one of the first things I do, because that's how I spend time with me. That's how I spend time with God. That's how I spend time with just, getting to know what I need to do and setting the tone for my day. So really journaling was like huge. Got a therapist.
I'm glad you said that. I want to go back to that.
Of course, got a therapist. Like,
still got one.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So got a therapist. Because really, again, like having some type of indifferent or external party to help you process and look at and affirm the fact that you are not crazy.
Without emotion involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. So powerful. So those were I would say those were like the top 3 things that really helped to pull me out of it. And honestly, just give it time.
Yeah.
Like, don't rush the process. Like, as you continue to, I guess, go through and look at your emotions, and don't overanalyze them, but analyze them just a little bit, you'll start to realize patterns and realize, like, for me, a lot of the situation I found that initially, like, I was blaming other people or blaming like, circumstance rather than realizing the responsibility and the accountability that I held that, allowed it to play out how it played out.
For sure. Now, and I appreciate your transparency, because I think this is where it starts. And that's also like, and this is therapy for me, like doing these episodes and in the show is therapy for me. So I'm glad you said therapy. But before I get to therapy, I'm glad you said journaling, because as a male, I started journaling probably once maybe in middle school, I believe.
Okay.
Obviously I stopped, but my uncle actually the one that put me onto it. And I've seen from then to now how far it's really helped me come. And like you said, even with the music and the Zen noise, I actually go to sleep like that. For the most part, I started that for a while ago, and was like just listening to like ocean sounds versus listening to like words through music. Although we love dope music or whatever, but it's like we need that other side of really being able to take that solitude with ourselves and really go within ourselves to pretty much help us prevail to the next level. Wonderful. And that obviously not necessarily mean just physical or financial, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So I'm glad you said that. But as far as therapy, what would you say? I'm glad you said you're in therapy, and that's one thing I definitely am a huge advocate for. What would you say has therapy taught you, the biggest lesson therapy has taught you now? And it even got to be the biggest, it's one of the most pivotal, let's say that. Because I know it could be so much.
So I've already said this, but number one, that I like affirming the fact that I am not crazy.
Okay.
I know a lot of men and a lot of people in general just don't tend to subscribe to astrology, but I think it's a little bit of truth in it. I'm a Pisces.
Sure. Okay.
So we tend to be like high emotions, right? Like,
so kind of like Cancers.
Yeah. No. Oh my gosh. Woo. They don't bump. We bump heads.
Y'all bump heads?
We bump heads.
Okay.
That's so funny.
Y'all good people though. Good Cancers are good people.
Cancers decent. They decent.
That's because you had a bad experience. Huh?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why. Okay.
Exactly.
Hopefully they evolved then. They're the bad guy today.
Man, but with that, yes, like I tend to be very like I'm always in my head. I'm always thinking about overthinking things, right? But I tend to overanalyze, and this is just me, like putting the astrology aside. I overanalyze my feelings because I've been writing so long, right? And what do you tend to write about? Your feelings. And now I'm thinking about, okay, well, I could have did this differently, or what does this mean? When really, like, to be very frank, some shit that happens means absolutely nothing. Like, I don't believe in coincidences. Like, everything happens for a reason. It's divine alignment, but you don't have to overanalyze every emotion and every situation that tends to happen to you. And that is a piece that I would say I learned within therapy. Is like a huge piece of it is like, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't need to overanalyze my feelings in order to figure out, like, okay, like, does this make sense or does it not? Emotions in and of themselves don't make sense, period.
Correct.
So that's like a major piece. And then the second one that I was going to say, like, I'm not crazy. And then there was another one, like the other revelation that I've received through therapy. Let's just say that.
Whenever you get back to it, no worries. Just cut me off if you come back to you.
Yes.
I want to ask you though, what would you say a pivotal part your mom has played? Obviously, she's the one that birthed you. You're here. I know she plays a pivotal part, but now, even from watching our videos together, what would you say is like one of the top things you've been able to gain from her?
Top things I've been able to gain, like, honestly, my resiliency. Like, growing up, my mom, she. Little one. Shout out to her, for real. All my friends call her Mama Price. Shout out to Mama Price.
Shout out Mama Price.
Yes.
Sure. Shout out her.
My resiliency 100%. So my mother, she got pregnant with me when she was 15.
Okay.
So I basically grew up with my mom.
Yeah.
I grew up with both my parents because my dad was pretty young too. So I have seen all of life happenings happen to her.
Correct.
And with everything that she's endured, everything that she has overcome, she just continues to keep on going. Like, having her within my life allows me to see, and honestly, like, she's a little fiery little woman.
Yeah.
She's 4'11", not even 5 feet, like little.
Got the same height.
I'm 5'4". Come on now, what's up? But like, seeing her just like bounce back, or just like always handle anything that comes her way, has allowed me to stand in the power that, like, I know I can do anything. I can do absolutely anything. But my mother is also one of the people, like, just through viewing her journey, I've realized I can't do everything all at once. Because as a mom, as a wife, as all of these different things, like, you tend to have to do all of the things. And I see how that tends to affect my mom, right? And she's also similar to me in terms of she'll have a number of hustles going on at one point. And it'll tend to, like, bring stress and anxiety and all of that. And that's also a piece of where I get my habits and stuff from as well. But, like, she's the one who showed me, or like affirmed, that I can do anything. But from everything that she has been able to do in her experiences and situations, I've learned that I cannot do everything all at once. And I do need to, like, take it in stride, like one piece at a time. So I would say that's like a major